What's on Your Minda contains honest, intimate, and uncensored depictions of mental health issues and experiences. Content and trigger warnings can be found in the description for each episode. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do.
Welcome back to another episode of
What's on Your... That's okay.
Let's just do it again. Welcome back to another episode of
What's on Your
Minda. I'm Amanda,
And I'm Diana.
and I realized we forgot to introduce ourselves in the last one.
I know.
Now you know who we are.
Again.
Yeah. Welcome back. We want to talk about more media today.
Yes.
I would let you introduce this topic because I feel like you are a bigger fan of this thing
Yes.
than I am this time.
Okay, wow. It's actually Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's a Nickelodeon kids show. It's a cartoon about a little boy who was destined to be the Avatar.
And what is the avatar?
Avatar is someone who's able to bend and manipulate all four elements, which is the four elements are earth, water, fire, and air. So every, I guess, life cycle, there's always that one person who's the avatar who has the power to bend all these four elements. And actually, another part about the avatar is also he's kind of like the bridge between the real world and the spirit world.
Yes.
So they're able to access the spirit world and meet all the previous avatars from previous lives coming together, harness even larger energy. So the purpose of this avatar is to maintain balance of the world. I don't really know how or why. You know what I mean? Why can't it be balanced without the avatar? Why do you need a sorcerer to do it? What are your thoughts?
You know what? I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
I think I agree, but maybe there's some sort of story about the origins. Maybe there's a reason why avatars became necessary.
Actually, there is.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've watched it. It's actually from another, it's like another series of the Avatar, which is Avatar Korra. Have you watched?
I have not. Are you
Yeah.
gonna spoil it for me?
Okay, maybe you don't. But I believe there's a story of the origin of the Avatar, the first ever Avatar, and why that Avatar came about and how he became the Avatar.
Oh, so you know that story. Don't spoil it. But you know that story. Does it make sense? Like, does that answer your question of like, why is an avatar necessary?
Kind of. But it's also a little bit like, it really feels like there's not much faith in humanity or the humankind to be able to keep things in order with themselves, that they need somewhat like a superior, more powerful being to control or to teach everyone. You know what I mean? So
Are all avatars like Aang? Because he seems to be very like, balanced, like, but he's a kid lah. But
Yeah.
I still feel like those values are within him. Are they meant to be like that?
no. One thing people forget is avatars are first things first humans, and humans means they're flawed. Which is why I go back to the first question, which is that what makes you think you're so it feels a little bit like monarchy.
Okay.
Like I feel okay. I don't know if I want to say that. Maybe you can scratch that out. Yeah, but it's essentially saying like this person what makes this person who chose him to get all this power.
What were you about to say?
Yeah, something like monarchy, like you only chosen as to get the power because of royalty blood. Who made you royal in the first place?
Yeah.
Why
yeah.
you?
Like,
What
why
made
were you
special?
chosen
Exactly.
to do this?
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
interesting.
To answer your question, no, actually each avatar is completely different. And they're actually a resemblance of their like natural bending. So Aang is the avatar we're going to talk about, which is he's an airbender. So airbenders are naturally a bit more flowy, calm, They're supposedly Buddhists. They're very much spiritual, connected to their spirituality, very, very spiritual. Which means also they're really gentle people because they are so connected with nature. They believe that there's so much energy and chi around them, so they really like respect life in that sense.
Okay.
So that's why you see Aang being like that. But there's also a sense of joyful and playfulness in him as well because he is a child. Yeah. So, but he's also someone who's such a, what do you call that? Like a very handal. What's a handal in English? Like really powerful bender. He's able to master it so young and so early. So
Interesting. Okay.
so the previous avatars are actually, previous avatars.
The one right before Aang was a firebender,
Yes.
right? In origin.
Yes. So his personality is not the same like Aang, you know. And as you can see in the episodes when Aang was really finding it hard to choose on what to decide to do with the Fire Lord.
Yeah.
That really clashed with his values and it's the same as clashing with the values of being an airbender, right?
That's
what the
true.
air nomads believed in. But with the previous avatars, they were not from the air family or the air nomads. They were like, just done,
Yeah.
right? They were just like
The ends justify the means kind of situation.
exactly. So yeah, they're not the same. And there's also, I think that in the past there were also a bit more reckless avatars who's like,
Yeah.
oh my god, I get all this power, like, and even Avatar Korra, the one after Aang, she's so different.
Okay.
So
She is waterbender.
yes, she's a waterbender.
Interesting.
We'll leave it as that.
We'll leave it at that. But you mentioned so the previous avatars of firebender. Like we know in the series there are some iconic firebenders.
All right.
I feel like we should talk about them.
Yes, the none other than the prince and the princess of Fire Nation, and also the Fire Lord Ozai. Yeah, what do you want to know? What are your thoughts on them?
So Zuko, Azula,
Yes.
and their dreadful father,
Yes.
Ozai.
Yes.
I think it's because you mentioned like your fire bending or like where you're from can kind of shape your personality.
Yeah.
But I feel like even within these three people we mentioned,
Yeah.
there are differences. And I want to mention the fourth, which is Uncle Iroh.
Yes. Oh my
Completely
gosh.
different, but he's
So
a firebender.
Yes. And not just any firebender, he's a really powerful one.
Yeah.
Also a really respected general. Until I guess he was not respected anymore towards the end.
Because he left.
Yeah, because he was known as a traitor, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Very interesting because like what compelled, for example, I mean these are just questions in my mind, like what compelled Zuko to leave? What compelled Azula to stay? And what compelled Ozai to become the tyrant that he did? What compelled Iroh to turn to a life of like kindness and compassion
Yeah.
in response to whatever he went through?
Yeah. It just clicked, it just dawned on me that Fire Lord Ozai and Iroh are brothers.
Yeah,
Blood brothers, right?
exactly.
And they're so different. But we don't know. We don't know for sure. Maybe there was a time Iroh was like that,
Maybe. I mean, I'm sure he had to do something to become the general of
Yes.
the army, the military
Yeah.
that they had.
But it doesn't mean you need to be ruthless in order to be a good leader. Yeah. So I think the biggest difference between the two, and it's kind of similar, like Zuko and Azula, and then Ozai and Iroh, like they're kind of like the younger selves of each
Yeah, I guess so.
each person. It's I think that lack of empathy. Or that sense of ruthlessness, that sense of like I'm here to just take whatever I want, and no consequences, don't really care if it harms others.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Because, I mean, I feel like I watched it and I really love it. but I also feel like because I only watched it for the very first time last year, right? So I don't have this, longer time to sort of sit with all of these things and the characters
Yeah.
enough to sort of analyze them. So I have questions for you today.
Sure.
Okay. I have questions. So we know, okay, by the way, if you're watching this, heavy spoilers for Avatar the Last Airbender and everything that happened. But I feel like I would like to focus on the firebenders too. Because I find it so fascinating that one of the main characters was an antagonist at the beginning.
Yeah.
Zuko was chasing after Aang and his friends.
Yes.
In order to capture him and bring him back to his father.
Yep.
What are your thoughts about
Zuko's storyline and character is so rich and so well made. And I think also why we have high expectations on series like Game of Thrones is because like Nickelodeon was able to do it with a kids show. If you saw the evolution of Zuko, he was this like really angry.
Yes.
Like I would say like his anger or temper wound was so like, what's the word, like really sensitive, right? Like, and he's already in such a bad mood, and the thing about it is also he feels that his bad mood is justified.
Yeah.
It's like, can't you see
right.
the scar on my face? I hate the world. What are you talking about? Yeah, I have every right to hate the world. And in some ways, his anger is justified. Facts.
Yeah.
But you can also see how he channels it.
Yes.
And I think that's what his uncle was trying to teach him. How to actually channel this anger or this resentment or hatred or this energy of this anger you have inside of you that is not as destructive. That is not, it doesn't have to be destructive. And you can see his destructive anger made him resentful, made him burnt out. I really felt he was burnt out for a long time, for trying to chase his father's approval.
That's true.
And and affection and acceptance. Until he finally realized, and he said some really powerful things like, he said to his dad like, I will never be able to please you. I think that's and I remember that part when his dad tried to interject. He was like, I'm talking here. It's like, if I do correct me if I'm wrong. So I can really see at that time I think he released that, and you can see his true self starts to emerge. Starts to come out. But it's channeled from that anger and that hurt that he's been through, the rejection. I mean, imagine being rejected by your dad.
Life.
Yeah. From someone, again, like a really important person in your life, a really important role, and your caregiver, right? So, and then
Interesting.
so
I like what you said about Uncle Iroh being there, because I think if he wasn't, we could have had a completely different outcome for Zuko. Like, the fact that he had this, father figure, actually, in Uncle Iroh, that was like, anger is not everything. Like, being brutal and violent is not, it doesn't make you stronger.
Yes.
Like, kindness and understanding and compassion, that's what makes you stronger.
True. And I think that's also really cool because it's quite hard for Zuko to separate that, because his element is fire.
Yeah.
And fire is very much like explosive and like destroying things. So I think that was also a part of like the way he talks about fire is like almost shameful. Like and you can see also with Aang also, like when he first started firebending, he hurt Katara. There was also a lot of shame with that.
Yes.
It's like, oh, fire is just a really dangerous, destructive thing. Like, it's explosive, it's evil. Similarly with anger, it's like, oh, anger is explosive, it's destroying things, it destroys relationships and so forth. So until they both overcame the shame, once they're like, okay, it doesn't have to be that way, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so it's actually, fire is deeper than that. It's more transformative if you allow it to flow in a healthy way.
Wasn't that one episode where Aang and Zuko did that fire dance?
Yeah.
Where it's like fire, that whole like tribe there.
Yep.
Were not using fire for violence, but it was just a part of their life of like, it's so revered, it's so fluid,
Yes.
that it can be, it's a life force.
Yes, that's the thing.
destruction.
Exactly. We forget, or at least throughout the show, people forget, these characters forget that a big part about fire is it is a life force.
Yes.
It keeps the planet warm, it keeps everything alive, it cooks our food, it destroys bacteria and things like that. So it's actually healthy and important.
Exactly.
And there's life in fire.
Yeah.
It's just
like all the other elements. Like,
yes.
fire is vital.
Yes.
And it's not just a destructive property.
Yes.
Right?
But I do say with fire, you have to kind of like take time, or you have to look at it a little bit. You have to be a bit more purposeful with how you look at it, because on the surface it can seem, oh, fire is bad, fire is painful, whereas which also means that it deals with probably a lot more stigma compared to other elements.
Makes sense.
Like water. Water is healing. Water fuels our body. 70% of our bodies are water. We need to survive. And also the stereotype that comes with waterbenders is that, oh, they're weak. They can't stand up for themselves. But you can see they're actually you can do so much with.
Yes.
They can also be protective and aggressive if they want to be, right? Similar with air and airbending, and earth as well. It's like, oh, airbenders, the stereotype is there. They're fluid. They're
flighty. They're wishy-washy.
They avoid problems.
Yes.
They're non-confrontational. But the tornadoes, eye of the tornado, forces you to look at the problem. Similarly with earth, it's like, oh, it's just rock. It's hard. It's solid. But it can also be molded to mud.
Yeah, clay.
Clay, exactly.
Can make things.
Can be
if
fluid.
built.
Yeah, so, it's a little bit deeper than it is.
Definitely. I like that. I like that analysis of like the elements and the people who bend it, right? Who bend the elements, that their personalities may be influenced by it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's so many different parts of it that you can choose.
Yeah.
What you want to do.
Yeah.
Like, then I want to know, for example, that Zuko story, like, fleshed out. He's like, rebelled against it. He came out of it. He realized that what his father was doing was wrong.
Yeah.
Came out of it, learned. His sister,
Yeah.
Azula.
You see the other side of the
other
outcome,
side.
right? Yeah. Where she came from a place of like getting that father's approval, which Zuko didn't.
Yeah.
She didn't get punished. She was viewed to never do anything wrong.
Yeah.
Actually, when you look at it, she was on top of the game all the time, which is what.
Perfection.
Yeah, she's perfection, right? According to her
Yeah.
dad's eyes, and you can really see that because when there are any realities or events or moments that challenges that. For example, her friends not choosing her. It's a form of rejection. It's to say, oh, whatever I've been doing has been wrong because I'm losing these friends.
Yeah.
You can see her reaction, her emotion, her ability to regulate her emotions is completely non-existent because she immediately like explodes on them. And even though she desires that closeness from them, she pushes them even further away by hurting them. Right?
Exactly.
Like,
Because she doesn't know how to express it and how to. Maybe she doesn't even know what she's feeling.
Yes.
She's just like, you are wrong and I'm still right, and
Yes.
you're, I feel angry at you.
Yeah, and I believe it's not just not knowing what she's feeling, but not permitting herself to feel anything else.
Yes.
Besides these maybe specific things that she's allowed to feel. I'm not allowed to feel like I'm a failure, or that I've been disappointed, or I'm sad. No. That's all weakness. That's cannot. I need to portray or to only accept that I can feel angry because this is a part of me that drives me to be motivated. And in order to fulfill whatever to be perceived well by my dad, this fire lord, right? It's crazy.
Yeah. That's crazy.
I
Like,
know.
that just makes me think about how throughout the whole series, her goal was the same as Zuko's at the beginning, right?
Yes.
Of like pursuing this person and taking them back and whatever. But the way she went about it is so different because she had the validation from the beginning. She
Yes.
knew and was very confident in her power.
Yes.
But when things started going wrong,
Yeah.
she had no idea how to deal with any of that.
Exactly.
It's never happened before. She's
Yes.
always done.
Perfect. Yeah.
It's
she's
always been perfect.
Yeah.
Right? So
Exactly.
so you start to see the cracks forming
Exactly.
over time, especially in the final book, right?
Yeah.
And the last few episodes, I feel, where they show how she was actually really breaking down.
Yes.
I
How she
think that was-
completely lost the trust with everyone. She
Yeah.
fired everyone.
she was alone.
Yes.
Didn't she like have a moment of like hallucination
Her
in the
mother,
mirror and
yes.
like all of that, and she looked
Projecting.
terrible.
Yes.
Like
She's like
was-
mentally unwell.
yeah.
You know?
At that point, she really,
And the I would say it started I mean, if we would analyze this, conceptualize this, like obviously the predisposing is her narcissistic, unhealthy APSD father. Okay?
ASPD.
ASPD father.
Yeah.
And then also the absence of a mother,
Yeah.
right? For whatever reason, right? Whether she was emotionally, and we know she was physically not there as well. And maybe her own other temperaments about herself that she may have inherited from her father and her grandparents and so forth. So we know that, and we know the triggering points for her was when anything that would shake her reality of failure, of rejection.
Yes.
Like when she gets rejected by her friends, when she sees her brother thriving, that somewhat irks her. And the I would say the biggest breaking point for her was when her father said, "You're not going to join me to
Yeah.
the fleet." You really can see, what are you talking about? Like she immediately spirals.
Yeah.
Right? And her father was like, "What is this behavior? Never seen this before. What are you doing? Get yourself up together." So you can see he's also not an emotionally safe person.
Yeah.
Unable to actually help her regulate, but just comforts her by saying, "Okay, now I want you to stay here because you're the new Fire Lord."
Yes.
So she was trying, but let's be real. She already knew, in the end, I'm still not good enough to be on that fleet with my dad.
Yes.
You know?
And that, I think, shattered everything that was left behind.
Exactly.
And that final scene, the battle scene between them, between Azula, Katara, and Zuko,
yeah.
right?
Technically, it was just supposed to be Zuko and Azula, by the way. But in true Azula nature, she is cunning. She would want to, win no matter what. So she hasn't, in that sense, doesn't have that principle of honesty and,
yeah,
of like, okay, I'm going to be true to my word, that
it's
I
like
can accept that I've lost.
1-to-1, like she
No,
won't be able
she
to
won't.
do that. Yeah.
She can't honor that,
Yes.
because she's also desperate to cling onto something to prove to her worth.
Yes. But that whole scene, you can see how far gone she was.
Yeah, and you can also see it's like how you said when they first started, like Zuko was so not confident, was so like emotionally hurt, and she was like somewhat she was very confident, and somewhat she looked like she enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Seeing her brother being exiled like that, right? And then at the end, you can see Zuko is this completely different person with completely different values from his family, feeling a bit more stable in his sense of self, and he can sense in her, yes, she has the power, yes, she has I guess better bending skills,
Yeah.
but that emotional and mental stability and that kind of grace was not there.
Yeah.
Which made it, she lost the confidence, towards the end. And then you can see the tears coming out, because that's what it really is. The underlying, under that anger is the sadness of being rejected, of constantly needing to prove your worth to your Fire Lord father, or feeling like you're being rejected by your mom, that your mom is choosing your brother. Whether or not it's real or not, whether it's not is true or false, doesn't matter, because that's her reality and those are her feelings.
That's
and
true.
she's allowed to feel that way, right? So yeah.
But she didn't have an Uncle Iroh with her by her
I
side.
know.
But I also feel like even if he was there, I don't think she would have been ready to face that and actually change.
Yes.
Compared to Zuko, where he was at that point of readiness, he could face it and change because he was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, like this is not good.
Yeah. You're right about that. I agree. Because I think the thing about Uncle Iroh is he's really wise. And I do think he chooses people who he feels like, okay, I have that sense that, that change can happen here.
Yes.
And he's definitely sensed Zuko's type of anger versus Azula's type of anger is a bit different. Where Zuko's type of anger comes from a place of getting hurt.
Yeah.
And it's and there's shame in it. Whereas Azula's type of hurt or anger, it comes from like maybe a bit of a narcissistic point of view.
I think so.
Yeah, again, it's like I'm being disrespected. You're beneath me.
That's why I'm angry.
That's why I'm angry. You don't make yourself small. That's probably what Uncle Iroh sensed, that okay, that type of anger or that kind of fiery energy, I can't really do anything about it until, for whatever circumstances, can actually change or break that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas for Zuko, it's more of like he needs a gentler hand. He is a gentler soul. He is someone who is a bit more connected with his emotions, and
because he could sense that anger was coming from hurt and sadness. I mean, that scar on his face was put there by his own father.
Right.
And at such a young age, when he dared to give an opinion that let's not kill everybody.
Yeah.
And he got punished for having that kind of
opinion,
gentler, weaker opinion.
Yeah.
But
it actually showed that he was the true change of what the Fire Nation needed. And I'm so glad that he, in the end, became the Fire Lord. But it's so funny when you said about the scar, right? The first thing that came up to my mind was that episode that they went to a play, and then people were dressing up as him, and then he was like, the scar is on the left, not on the right.
Oh yeah.
He was so angry. But it's so, I also see that as growth in some ways, that he's able to express that.
Yeah.
But in a, in his Zuko way, like he's not like trying to like, I'm gonna take down the entire play for disrespecting me. I'm gonna burn everything down. He's just like, oh, they're so stupid. It's not the right side. And he's just like, whatever.
True.
So,
I like that. Yeah.
So stupid. He's so funny. Like,
He is.
Yeah.
Even unintentionally, I feel.
Yeah, in him just being himself.
Yes.
And just like, I don't know how to be affectionate, which is also quite sad because he had an avoidant father.
Yeah.
And also his mom was not physically present.
Yeah.
So you can see he's very uncomfortable with affection.
Yeah.
Which showed, when he tried to make friends, it's like talking to a frog, it's like, hi, I'm Zuko. Oh, that's not. I used to chase you guys around, but I'm here to teach the Avatar firebending. And then he just felt so uncomfortable with that. He felt that so unnatural. Not only that, because that's not what he normally says, but because it emotionally doesn't feel right.
Because he's not the type to, like, he's not used to being open and vulnerable to make connections. He's the type, he's used to
being distrustful. Like, I can't trust people.
Yeah, I can't trust people. If you want to be my friends because I'm the prince, I'm powerful, my father's the Fire Lord.
Yep.
Like, that's all you want from me.
Oh, you want money.
Yeah.
And everything's transactional.
Exactly. And so for him to initiate that of like, he's helping Aang with learning firebending, but obviously his friends don't trust him.
Yeah.
Right? It's like he's putting himself in such a vulnerable spot, but you can see how much he grew.
Yeah.
Because he was able to do that without just getting out of there because people were disrespecting him.
Yeah. And on top of that, I also noticed that he was like, when you can see that he's unable to relax until it even shows when he was hanging out with in any episodes that they were relaxing, either with the Avatar team or with his team. He's just like, no, there's no such thing as relax. Like, we constantly need to sail 24/7. We constantly cannot stop, and and it really shows that. I mean, the trauma he's been through, it's really sad. But yes,
it is very sad.
With that being said, I think we may need to put a pause on this. And if you guys enjoyed this episode, feel free to let us know by liking, subscribing, and commenting. And maybe we'll do a part 2 on other characters that we didn't get to talk about.
Wow. Thank you, Diana, for wrapping it up.
Yeah. Just wrap it up just like that.
Yeah, isn't it easy?
Yeah. Can do it, man. Okay.
All right. Yeah. Like she said, let us know if you want more. Yeah. You can reach us at Instagram at Minda Psychology, or email us at hello@mindapsychology, or just visit our website for more information at mindapsychology.com. Thank you for watching. This has been another episode of What's on Your Minda.
Bye-bye.